Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening from whichever time zone you may be calling us in from today. My name is Rebecca Cronin, and I'm one of the Customer Success Managers here with the Altair Data Analytics team. The Customer Success team, we're here as another point of contact for you to reach out at any time with any questions or concerns. If you're unable to get a hold of your account manager, we're another resource for you. So we're very excited that you're joining us for our second Ask the Expert AI Studio AI Hub webinar session. Our goal for this session is to provide an open time slot where you may freely drop in, and we'll do our very best to provide any assistance in answering any and all questions after demonstrating our topic segment. So we'll begin the session in just a few minutes, and before we dive in, I'd like to provide a few housekeeping items. Over on the right, you should hopefully have a control panel where you'll see we actually have a handout section. It is a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation that you can download, which does contain some helpful web links for resources for AI Studio. You'll also see there should be a question panel, or might say chat. It's the opportunity where you can submit your questions. And again, it does not have to be about our topic that we're covering today. It could be anything around AI Hub, AI Studio. We'll do our best to get to those questions today, and if we don't, we will do a follow-up with you. Allow us between 2 to 5 business days, and if necessary, we'll open a support ticket to continue that follow-up. So again, I'd like to thank you for attending us. I'd like to introduce our expert, Jeff Chowaniec. He is one of our senior data scientists. He's worked for almost 10 years in various technical support roles, including that of Altair and former RapidMiner. He's one of the original RapidMiner specialists, and we're very fortunate to have his expertise. Jeff leads by example, providing tremendous assistance to both our customers and our own internal teams. Some of you might have even had the benefit of working with Jeff. So with no further ado, I am going to make Jeff presenter, where we'll dive in to our topic of LLMs and I should have updated that, sorry, AI Studio via HuggingFace. So let me make him presenter.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, welcome everybody. Today I am going to cover a topic that is controversial to my heart. Because I have spent years building text classification models, stuff like sentiment analysis and document classification with clients with Altair using AI Studio for many years. And I have solutions that are still deployed and being used at institutions across North America. And I made a bold prediction about, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when all of the LLMs and OpenAI and ChatGPT became a hot button topic, that this was not going to impact my daily life at all. I'm not going to have to change. I think the hype train's too big. And anyway, I started using LLMs and it made my life a lot easier. I'm sad about it, I'm angry about it, and happy about it all at the same time. Luckily, it has made my life and the life of my customers a lot easier because we work together using the HuggingFace open source library for large language models in AI Studio. So what I'm going to do today is just cover what this extension is in AI Studio and when and how to use it effectively. So what I have here is a workflow. This isn't doing any of my LLMs or text mining or any of that good stuff. But what it does do for me is it allows me to query a whole lot of documents. So I'm actually leveraging quite a few extensions in this, but I'm basically just giving a whole bunch of links and crawling the web to pull article text for me. So this workflow, all it's responsible for doing is generating a data set for me, which is this essentially this web query That gives me my article text, my URL. I have a published data I've extracted out of the HTML, the title, and a few other fields that are relevant to me. And what I want to do is I essentially want to pull as much information out of these articles as I possibly can. There's no structure to these articles. It's not like I'm looking for charts that or data that's being published via these articles. I just want to gather information. In particular, I'm looking at just articles on renewable energy in the United States. So are they rules, regulations, funding for projects, etc. And essentially, I have a process for doing just that. What I am going to do is I'm going to make a change here, enable my LLMs. So normally in the past, what we'd have to do is we'd have to use some historically scored data set, right? If I want to know if this is talking about solar, I'd have to have a bunch of articles. I'd manually go through them. I'd create a column that said renewable type, and I'd say, okay, this is solar, this is wind, this is nuclear, this is solar, this is solar, this is wind, this is solar, this is wind, this is nuclear, etc. And once I do that, then I would probably do some sort of text mining where I would pull out this information. So now I'd have a labeled data set, some structured data to learn on, and I'd build my own model for making this prediction. I loved doing this. It is a super fun activity, but LLMs have just made this job a lot easier for me. So let's talk about the Gen AI extension in AI Studio. So if I want to get a hold of this extension, I can go to extensions and marketplace, in which I could look for Gen AI. Maybe let's try Gen AI. Maybe it's generative. There we go. Third time's a charm. Perfect. There's this generative models extension. So normally how extensions work, you can think about it as like downloading an algorithm package. Like if you're used to R or Python, it's essentially the same thing. It's just a set of algorithms and functions I'm downloading and adding to Studio. There's no extra licensing or anything like that. I just select it for installation, and then I'll have to restart Studio to install it. But what it gives me access to is if I open up this extensions folder, I can find my generative models down below, in which I will see a handful of models for HuggingFace and for OpenAI. There's a big asterisk on OpenAI. We're only looking at HuggingFace, which is the open source library. But if your organization has access licenses to the OpenAI API, you can leverage those as well. I'm not touching this today, but I just wanted to note that it is in fact here. So the HuggingFace has some options where I can open up my tasks and I can look for what I want to do with my text-based data. I could do some token classification, some zero-shot classification, which is what I use in this demonstration, and I'm leveraging the summarization as well. But there's a lot of options. What you'll notice is that these algorithms actually match a lot of the model types that are available on HuggingFace. And I'll show that off in a moment. But what's more important here is that this, since this library is built in Python, we actually have some dependencies and some installation work to do with this extension, which is a little bit different than the normal extension. The normal extension, I'm just downloading a whole bunch of new operators that are either built with the custom operator extension or are coded in Java. So I'm just importing a jar file that has all of the stuff that I need in it. In this case, I actually need some extra components to utilize these HuggingFace libraries. Most notably, I need a Python environment to work in. The nice thing about all of this, and I've set this up a few times very recently, and it takes about anywhere from 10 to 50 minutes, depending on how familiar you are with the systems. But on our documentation page, there's really easy installation setups where we're going to need the Python scripting extension, the custom operators extension, and we're going to need to set up a Python environment it's best to do this via Anaconda. So there are some extra setups with this extension because we're essentially running HuggingFace models in RapidMiner. So in order to do that, we need an RM GenAI environment in Python to run these models. But we are using AI Studio to run them. So if I jump over to HuggingFace now, this library will also be very important. You'll notice if I go to our natural language processing, you'll see text classification, token classification, zero-shot classification, and summarization. Essentially, if I'm jumping back to AI Studio, you see all of the functions I see here. So for example, if I want to run a summarization, what I'll need to do is I'll need to find a summarize model that I want to leverage. So in this case, I think I'm using the Falcons AI text summarization. I really enjoyed this one. I've had a lot of success with the Facebook algorithms as well. But I think I'm leveraging the Falcons AI. So I'll select the type of action I want to take in AI Studio, and then I'll have to select a model I want from the HuggingFace library. Now, the way our extension works, if I jump back to AI Studio, I have a bunch of LLMs I'm leveraging here in AI Studio. I'm running our zero-shot classification to make 3 new columns, and I'm running our summarization. So all I need to do to query these models, and it's even easier for our summarize, I will grab the summarize operator from over here. I will deliver the model that I'm leveraging. So I'm selecting this fine-tuned, oh, I actually used a different one because these are news articles. So I used a fine-tuned summarize specifically for news articles. And really all I need to deliver is a prompt. This prompt is telling AI Studio what column I want to send to the LLM. In this case, I'm selecting the article text that we saw in our results. I have a minimum target length of 50 and a maximum target length of 150. What this is doing for me is saying, okay, when you summarize with this algorithm, the minimum words for an efficient summary is 50, the maximum is 150, and I'm running on GPUs. There is extra setup required depending on if you want to run CPU or GPU. I highly recommend going through the setup to run the GPU. This model runs for me in less than a minute if I have GPUs enabled. If I'm running on CPUs, these are really not optimized for that, and it will take drastically longer. So I highly recommend the GPU setup for the extension. And all this setup, it basically generates that summarization for me. Now I'm also doing some zero-shot classification, and it's the same. In this case, I've actually downloaded this model, so you can run the download model operator. I'm using the BART large MLNI from Facebook, and so I'm storing this one on my machine instead of calling the library itself, and I'm using the load model operator to just point at the model that we're using. Since I'm using it 3 times in a row, it didn't really make sense to just go fetch it and then fetch it again and fetch it again. I just wanted to fetch it once and then use it for all 3. So that's why I'm leveraging the download and load model here in this case. But get policy, get renewable type, and get technology are actually all just my zero-shot classification. I've just renamed these operators. So you can see I can click in here and give it a good old rename. But they're just my zero-shot classification, which, just like the summarization, requires me to deliver a model. In this case, my load model is actually delivering the model object to the operator. So I don't actually have this model parameter. I've checked this use local model, so it's looking for a model coming into this port, and each operator is passing the model along to the next operator for me as well. So pretty handy there. But the zero-shot classification, and take a look, I'm saying, hey, look at my article text again, basically allows me to specify a set of classes. So the first thing I wanted to look at in these energy articles was, is it a law, a bill, a regulation, a tariff, or is it about funding for renewable energy projects? So I'm essentially saying, okay, I want you to utilize this LLM to make a prediction on if it's laws, bills, regulations, tariffs, or funding. I repeat this because I also want to know, hey, what renewable are we looking at? Are we looking at solar power, wind, nuclear, thermal, hydro, or are we looking at power plants in particular? So there's a lot of retrofitting current non-renewable energy power plants into renewable energy power plants. So there's a lot of regulation, funding projects for those as well. This essentially acts as like my other. So if they're not talking about a specific thing, they're either talking about power plants or looping it into power generation. And then I've got my technology too. So I have, are we looking at EVs, energy storage, virtual power plants, emissions, or transmission? So ultimately, I'm using these zero-shot classifications to create a new column. So for example, I'm calling this column technology. I'm calling this column renewable type. And I'm calling this column my policy. And this is amazing because like I set up earlier, I've done a lot of this for clients that I've worked with over almost the last decade, where we built custom models to make these predictions. We had to hand label data, we had to tokenize, filter stop words, all that good stuff, just to get to a point to make a prediction and fine tune a model so we could accurately make these predictions. And now I can skip all of those steps and press this play button, and RapidMiner will use these available open source algorithms to make these predictions for me. All I have to do is tell it what I want to query and what classes I want it to figure out on its own. And it does a great job of doing that for me. I can press play here, but I already have these results, so I'll save us a little bit of the waiting time. And so what I'll get out from this output now, if I do a fit all column widths, I still have my article text, my title, my URL, but here I have my summary of the article. So if I hover over this, I can see the text output that I'm getting. So I'm getting a nice summarization of each of my articles. And then I also get my zero-shot classification here. So I get my renewable type, where I'm pulling out solar power, power plants, thermal power, wind power, energy storage, emissions, transmission, EV for my technology. And then I've got my policy coming out as well. You'll see laws, bills, regulation, funding project. So this worked great. All I had to do was select a model type, point at the column I'm using in my data set as the text to get this information out, which was article, and then deliver some classes. And I'm delivering these classes based off of what I want to get out of this article. So there is a little bit of human in the loop here, trying to figure out what's important, what I need to pull out if I want to build a model or do some data visualization with this. What you'll also notice is there's a couple other columns over here. Agency and company that I did not have LLMs for. Another piece of this, since I'm covering, hey, how do we use the LLMs? What can we do with them? What's also important to know is, are there operators, non-LLM operators in AI Studio that can actually do a similar process, but in a quicker way? So like, for example, I've got agency and company here. You'll notice that companies not filled in, not all articles have a company referenced in them, but some of them do. And so I'll get missing values here. And my agency actually has multiple outputs. So if I found multiple agencies in here, it'll add that pipe in and just tell me, hey, what agencies are being referenced in here. So there are still scenarios in which your classic text extraction is much faster or much easier than using the LLM technologies. So not everything is obsolete, which makes me happy because my original prediction did not come true. I ended up using LLMs and they did make my life better. But there are still operations in RapidMiner that are easier done with traditional text extraction methods. So here I use the generate extract operator to just simply say, okay, look for all of these company names, and if you find it, spit it out. And then I do the same thing with my agency. Since the agencies always get referenced in the article by these names, I just pull them out because it was a lot easier that way. For example, NERC, FERC, EPA, governor/governor, Department of Energy, SEC. It was easier to just find these tags than try to trust an LLM to make a prediction if this is NERC, FERC, EPA. I didn't really need it to predict whether or not these articles were talking about this agency. I just needed to find the text for this. So I also wanted, I know this is focused on LLMs, but I wanted to bring up, while LLMs do make life better, there are really simple and elegant solutions to solve a lot of problems without having to rely on cumbersome and high performance computing algorithms like our large language models. All I needed to know is if the text is referenced, because if they're talking about the Department of Energy, they're going to use DOE somewhere in the article. So I didn't need some LLM to make this prediction. I just needed to look for these tokens. And that's all I did here. So that's where those extra columns are coming from. There are still uses for traditional text mining alongside LLM. And hell, I even think that the two of these solutions are actually meant to be used in tandem with one another. LLMs aren't replacing old school text extraction. They're just making certain use cases a lot easier to do, and also opening the world of AI to stuff, to non-text classification stuff like summarization. I can't really use token extraction and traditional text mining to build a summarization of an article because there's nothing turning what I extract out as data back into a readable sentence. So these LLMs have a lot of uses, especially when I'm working with this unstructured data and just blocks of text in general, where my traditional text mining might fall short. I look at it as an extension of my toolbox, not a replacement of the tools I already know how to use. All right. That's pretty much what I want to cover on the LLMs today. I figure people are probably going to have some questions or stuff they're interested in, or they might even have AI Studio questions that are completely unrelated to what I wanted to cover. But this is something that I've been using a lot lately with clients and for my own work. So I wanted to take some time with the Ask the Expert session to kind of transfer the knowledge of what I've learned and my experiences with these algorithms to a wider audience. So Rebecca, with that, I'll open it up to some questions from the audience.
Sounds great. So folks, you have the option. We can unmute you and you can ask your question live, or if you're too shy, please type it in the chat and we can then share it and record it with other folks. And if it's a question you wanted to be answered offline, then just please make sure you put that comment to answer offline in private. But otherwise, it'd be a great opportunity to have those in attendance kind of see what's being asked. And it's like Jeff mentioned, you know, it doesn't have to be just about AI Studio. It could also be about AI Hub if you had any of those kind of questions.
Yeah, anything on the data science side of AI with Altair tools, specifically focused on AI Studio, AI Hub. Yeah, feel free to ask away.
So I know something, Jeff, for that website where you went and grabbed those models, the HuggingFace. Is that a link you can put in the chat?
Yes. Yeah. So huggingface.co, we want to go to /models. And this is actually in the documentation. So I'll put the documentation to the extension as well. So I can put those in the chat so people can take a look at those.
And
there's the HuggingFace library, and the documentation page as well has the link to that, but also a lot of the information you'll need on how to leverage the GenAI extension.
great. So the question that just came in, it says, if an article is related to more than one technology or policy, does the process just choose one of those, or is the article counted twice?
Yeah, so there is a checkbox for this in the operator for zero-shot classification, which is the multi-label. It still will only provide a single prediction for renewable type. However, what comes with the multi-label is it'll output the confidence of this prediction. So what you might see is solar power. I'm going to use solar power or the renewable type for this example. What we might see is solar power at a 90% confidence, wind at like an 85% confidence, and then everything else will be lower. So what we could do is just write a little bit of logic to pull the to check and see if there's one really high confidence or multiple, and then we can output them as a ranking. In this case, we were happy with the individual predictions, but there are options for producing multiple predictions per article. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I guess, Rebecca, we could throw up the poll, maybe?
Yeah, I could do that. Actually, we just had one come in. It goes, yep. Would you be able to run something similar on a series of PDF files that contain, for example, information about the financial performance of a publicly traded companies? If so, what sort of modifications would you need to make this process to do that? That's a long question.
Yeah, I get it. The nice thing is what I really need to do is pull in the text from the PDFs. So obviously these, depending on what I want to extract, what information I want to extract, I might be using a different algorithm. Right, because the zero-shot classification makes sense here. What you're talking about, I think, more so affects my first process, where I get these documents via the web. So I'm using our web mining extension to crawl these websites for these URLs. What you would end up doing in order to import those documents, you could just do the read document operator. You could do this in a loop, etc. But we would just be pointing at the PDF file and bringing the text in. There's a documents to data operator that could transform this into documents to data is what I want to search for. That transforms this into a data set, and then once it's in that data format, then I can just pipe it into those LLMs. So really the first thing is changing how we're bringing that data in. PDF files is a fine format. Specifically structured PDF files. So if they're actual text documents saved as a PDF rather than scanned image documents are always a headache. Now, there is a big distinction here because RapidMiner can handle the text of PDFs, and then I can treat it like data, just like I did with these article text, and do anything I want with it. However, there might be an easier solution if that financial information is available as semi-structured data in those reports. It might be better to use a different Altair tool called Monarch for data extraction, semi-structured data extraction through PDF. AI Studio can handle that, and if you want to pipe that text data through something like our LLMs, that's what your AI Studio is your solution. If specifically you want to look for semi-structured data in these PDF reports, Monarch might be the tool for you as well.
Thanks, Jeff. Sounds great. So as Jeff mentioned, I don't see any questions right now, so take advantage of our larger attendance. I'm going to launch a poll question. And so if your screen's in a maximum view, you'll have to minimize this in order to select our topic polls for our November session. And you can only select one. So try to pick the most favorite topic. So your choices are model optimization / hyperparameter tuning, transforming data for visualization, feature selection options, and then there's the other. So at the end of our webinar, there is a closing survey that will pop up, and where you please provide us some feedback, let us know how we're doing, but it gives you the option to share what other topic you'd like to review and learn about, and we'll then add that to the following poll option for voting. So I could see we're about 75% there. So don't be shy, folks. For those that haven't voted, please get your vote in. It counts. And we'll do a countdown. So again, if it's hard to decide, try to pick the most interesting one. And obviously these topics that does not get selected will remain on there to vote for the following time. And so our next session will be transforming data for visualization. All right, so you'll see here's a couple of different helpful web links, resources for you. If you ever need to contact our technical support team, it's right from our user community portal. You have 3 options. There's a contact support, create a case, or when you're logged in on the upper right, there's a little term called case and you can open a ticket. Documentation for the AI Studio could also be found within that user community under our documentation section. If you want to fine-tune your data scientist skills, we have our RapidMiner Academy that you can go and register. And again, we're offering now these Ask the Expert series. We're going to host this the second Wednesday of the month, make it a regular occurrence. Within the Academy, there's also the opportunity to get RapidMiner certification. I know there's some helpful documents in the RapidMiner cloud. And if you're unable to get a hold of your account manager, we do have a team mailbox for the customer success team that you can utilize to reach out to. This is what that community website looks like. So if you haven't joined, this is what you're looking at. As I mentioned, create a case, contact support, and the upper right, it got chopped off over here, is where you'd have your create a product case. And then our RapidMiner community, it's an open forum group where you can go and submit your questions there. Oops, sorry about that. So this is being watched and monitored by some of our experts and data scientists. The documentation, as I mentioned, here in the community, do a search for the AI Hub, AI Studio. Academies where you can go in and sign up and you can actually create a certain course structure and certification. In our Learning Center, again, another resource from our community, it'll take you to our e-learning site. So we do have some courses there if it's a little easier to find. I want to say there's a little bit duplicate of what's been provided. Marketplace, so if you are always wondering what's the latest version of AI Studio, AI Hub, you can go to the marketplace, search for the data analyst license suite, and you can locate the product. Hit the little star icon. This will add it to your favorite apps, so you're not searching through the whole system. You can find what's important to you. Some upcoming events, we do have this webinar, Future AI Horizons, October 23rd. And again, download that PowerPoint. You get a copy of this. You can scan the barcode and register. And our next session, November 13th, as we just voted, that topic will be the transforming So that's all I have there. Like I said, we got another like 15, 20 minutes. So I don't know if anyone thought of a new question they'd like to share and ask. So with this prediction that we just did here, Jeff, like what was the end result that we obtained?
Yes, the big thing is we're getting data. We're getting this output in particular. So when I run this, what we have is from all of those articles, we really just did data extraction, right? So we're not doing like predictive modeling in the way that we're using AI Studio to build predictive models to make a prediction. We're leveraging LLMs to do essentially text extraction model building for us without having to do any text extraction or model building. So instead of trying to figure out by reading the article if it's talking about solar power, whatever, we use the LLM to just tell us what it is based off of some really cool modeling that they do. Same thing with technology policy. Most of it is we want to get this information out because we want to do certain things with it. So like, for example, and this is kind of actually spilling the beans on what I want to talk about next week.
Okay.
yeah. So I basically do some data manipulation, but my end result ends up being this folder here. So for example, I take that, I say, okay, for thermal power plant, I want to look at the agency distribution, right? So SEC and FERC have a lot of these articles that are classified as thermal power. What agencies are affecting thermal power, either through regulation, funding projects, etc. So you can see EPA, it looks like Department of Energy and FERC are the big ones, along with EPA, etc. So I'm generating visualizations for this. Same thing for the renewable type. I'm also, like, if I pull up solar power, solar and energy are the two biggest words. So just building a word list based off of text mining the output. And then these are scaled by the number of references they have in the document. So solar power, storage, policy, generation, all of these make sense. And I probably could throw some extra stuff in here. But ultimately what this is doing is I'm just using LLMs to generate data for me to use.
Right. To create those future analysis.
Yep. And basically what I was going to do, the proposed topic that I threw in there, which got selected, is like the part 2. So somehow we managed to all select the kind of topic that this workflow continues on into, which is pretty fun. But yeah, this is going to touch on how to use the
data that we just captured.
Yeah, how to use the data we just captured. But there's an extension for creating these plots and storing them, which I'm using inside here. I'm not going to open this because it's spoilers for next week.
Yes, yeah, we'll wait.
But yeah, it just goes over how to use that extension to make plots and basically put all of those charts in that folder. But that's really what this output, these LLMs were used to basically get to that point. And it saves me months of work. Like, it might seem very simple, but in order to build a model to make those predictions and then trust that that model is good at making that prediction of like solar power or whether it's or the technology or the policy, it takes a lot of work.
Right.
You know, I can get to a prototype of that model pretty quickly because I've built so many of them, but it could take weeks or months of refinement in the text mining, improving the training data. There's just a lot that goes into it. And to be able to just query those large language models and get that result and you know, like, in order to be sure we got those classes correct in the query, we did have to like read the articles and make sure, like, yeah, this is like, we had to figure out, hey, how often are we getting the right answer? It was good enough that we were happy with the query and trusting it to make the right prediction. So we still had to do that manual validation. But I'm also only dealing with like 50 to 100 articles. So that doesn't take too long to look at the summary that I'm getting from my summarization and see, okay, yeah, this is definitely solar power. It's predicted as solar power. It's looking at energy storage and it's predicted at energy storage. So it's really easy to kind of check those boxes. The classes that we were building were easy for the LLM to figure out.
Nice. Well, I think the attendance has kind of gone down, and I think we'll just end early today.
That sounds good. Everyone can take about 15 minutes back, and this is a good session. Looking forward to continuing this storytelling next week.
You mean next month, November 9th?
Next month, sorry.
November.
Next month.
Yeah, sorry. The 13th.
Next session. There we go.
Yes, next session, the 13th. All right. All right, well, have a great afternoon, everybody. Great day and remainder of your week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yep, take care.